This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, The Weekly Show with Aditya.
This is episode 201 on the 29th of April 2020.
This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, The Weekly Show with Aditya.
It is a well known fact, in fact, it's a universal truth that human beings are hypocrite creatures. They are born hypocrites. What they say and what they mean, and reversing decisions because of flimsy reasons is second nature, is inimical to the way human beings function. And let's talk about this in the light of an incident which took place 2 years ago. Let's go in depth about the hypocritic nature of human beings in this interesting example. Those who follow the sport of cricket, or those who claim that they are experts, or those who are the usual fanatic about this sport, which is as complicated as the functioning of bureaucracy. Well, in that context, you must have heard about the ball tampering incident that happened 2 years ago when two cricketers, two sports athletes from Australia were charged with ball tampering, in which was infamously called the sandpaper gate incident. And on that light, I had written an article. Let me read that article, and you will have an idea as to exactly what I was talking about. The outlook towards ball tampering by Cricket Australia and the Sri Lankan Cricket Board. Australian cricketers Steve Smith, David Warner, and Cameron Bancroft, who were charged with ball tampering, bore the brunt of not only the local media but their home board Cricket Australia, retired players, and the world media. Their actions were scrutinized the same way as one would for match fixing, an eerie reminder of Pakistani players Mohammad Amir and Mohammad Asif, who were suspended for 5 and 10 years respectively, and even jailed for a short period for the no ball controversy. This also accentuates the quasi power of the umpires. Should the umpires have the same discretion and judgment as those of hockey and football for player suspension? That is, handing out red and yellow cards on the spot for any offences? Are they mere figureheads waiting for the match referee's decision? Cricket Australia officials had no alternative but to take matters into their own hands. Avoiding further humiliation, not only did they suspend the trio for 12 months, technically, it was 9 months for Bancroft. Steve Smith and David Warner were removed from the post of captaincy and vice captaincy respectively, and a clause added that these two individuals would never be able to take up leadership roles again. Clearly underlines the emotions of a sport and how invested one is in it. The suspension of the Australian cricketers might act as a deterrent to future players, but in the hindsight it was still harsh. Cricket Australia officials took this decision to preserve their reputation and credibility and never expected the sport in their country under their supervision to fall below certain standards. Now there is a stark contrast. The case of Sri Lankan captain Dinesh Chandimal, former captain Dinesh Chandimal, is in stark contrast. He was suspended for one match. But unlike Cricket Australia, the Sri Lankan Cricket Board, without any fuss, quietly announced an interim captain. They seemed untroubled and unfazed by the whole situation and complied with the International Cricket Council's decision and saw no reason to add any more punishments and hostility from their side. Ball tampering, unlike match fixing, is still vague as a concept. If electronic devices are not permitted to be with players and officials in the duration of the match, then what is the definition of foreign substances which can alter the shape or condition of the ball, and shouldn't this have similar restrictions? It is paradoxical that the players carried along with them jelly or sandpaper nonchalantly to the ground, and then we expect them not to use it. And this was 2 years ago when these players were suspended. They had become an example of what not to do. But in the light of this mythical virus and the whole idea of using saliva on the ball and the fears associated with this, the International Cricket Council, the International Cricket Board has come up with or is trying to come up with a novel solution to this novel mythical virus. There is a proposal to alter ball tampering laws. News is that the International Cricket Council may change its law on ball tampering and allow the use of an external substance to shine the ball. And why are they allowing this? Because naturally bowlers use their sweat or saliva on the ball, and we know the fears connected with sweat and saliva right now, and how this particular sport will change with respect to the idea of shining a ball, and then the whole question arises about reverse swinging and swinging the ball. Isn't this paradoxical to what happened 2 years ago? 2 years ago, everybody was shocked as if they have been struck by lightning in the light of the Warner Smith incident along with Bancroft. And now, 2 years later, yes, we have to adapt as circumstances change. But cricket has overall been such a complicated sport that we have to use our body sweat, our saliva, and we believe in terms like swinging the ball and whatnot. It shows how cricket is a complicated game in its entirety. Now, to elucidate further, a former coach has said something in light of this ball tampering law. This individual says that as far not using saliva or sweat on the ball is concerned, it is difficult to monitor. It is so natural for cricketers to do it. What if somebody uses saliva on the ball by mistake? Will you then change the ball every time? It can also lead to a dangerous situation where players are affected. I find this whole idea of ball tampering legalized to be parochial. As I said in my previous episode, it shows how human beings are vulnerable, malleable, and gullible, and how they believe that the sweat or saliva is going to affect you. Even if it does, just don't use this. Why worry about abstract things like ball tampering in the first place? Why should there be a concern for ball tampering or swinging the ball. The question then becomes, after the International Cricket Council has legalized ball tampering and allowed external substances, who will monitor this? What kind of judicial powers will the umpires have, or will they continue to have quasi judicial powers? Let's look at another article with respect to this ball tampering law. The usage of artificial substances to polish the cricket ball, which effectively means ball tampering, could be considered for legalization when the game resumes after the mythical pandemic that has made bowlers wary of applying saliva on the ball. Administrations are open to the notion of allowing for the use of an agreed artificial substance to polish the ball under the supervision of the umpires, which amounts to ball tampering as per the current rules governing the sport. This entire thing is so paradoxical, so ironical. Ball tampering should have been legal in the first place. One of the reasons the 2018 ball tampering scandal or ball tampering incident came into the focus was because the umpires managed to notice it, and then they were aided by the multiple cameras around the ground, multiple cameras that were on the ground, which allowed the umpires to view footage, which allowed the match referee to view footage, and it became a huge issue. But it only became a huge issue because the teams involved were Australia and South Africa. If this was a team like Bangladesh, Afghanistan, West Indies, and if they had attempted to do the same thing, it would have been quietly crushed under, like it was in the case of Dinesh Chandimal, the former captain who used jelly to shine the ball and in the same sense allow the ball to swing. Continuing with the article, the matter of saliva being unsafe was raised by ICC's medical committee and it would be addressed before this sport resumes. All sports activities have come to a halt after the mythical virus outbreak. Shining the ball is an integral part of the sport as it helps bowlers swing the ball, both conventional and reverse. If the move gets the go ahead, it would be quite ironic for the game's administrators after the 2018 ball tampering controversy, which led to 1-year bans on Steve Smith and David Warner for conspiring to use sandpaper to alter the ball. Following the chief executives meeting of the ICC, its medical committee headed by Peter Harcourt issued an update. Our next step is to create a road map for the resumption of international cricket, which will include a criteria for decision making and a checklist for what needs to happen. This will consider everything from player preparation to government restrictions and advisories and bio bubbles. The scale and complexity of getting cricket started again cannot be underestimated, particularly with respect to a global event. A current fast bowler said that Test cricket will become harder if the bowlers did not have enough means to move the ball. He said that I think the white ball would be fine, but test cricket would be very hard. Bowlers rely on any sort of sideways movement in the air. If you didn't maintain the ball at all for 80 overs, it would be quite easy to bat after that initial shine has gone. Whether you use saliva or sweat, maybe one person can do it. Another former player had a different take on this. When the action resumes, they should use only sweat for some time as the safety of the players is paramount.
This
Player added that when you are in the thick of things, you tend to forget it. You have to get the upper hand over the batters as you can't use anything besides sweat and saliva. The question is, what do you do when the batter is pulping you? You need to swing the ball, and what helps swing the ball is the aerodynamics. My solution for this is let the bowlers and the fielders also wear gloves. Yes, just like golf and baseball, let the bowlers and the fielders wear thick gloves, at least on one of their hands, and that will prevent any kind of transfer. Let's get back to something which changed the definition of ball tampering in the first place. The ball tampering incident, which apparently shook the entire cricketing world at its very foundation, was perhaps the last straw in an already mired series stoked with verbal and physical aggression. To add insult to injury, the team involved in executing this lost. It quickly divided the world into two factions. One group wants the perpetrators to be shunned, while for the other, ball tampering is not even something worth discussing. It is fodder for the media, and they seem to be enjoying playing the judge, jury, and the executioner and want to influence the executives in the outcome of this decision. This incident became global only because Australia was involved. Had this been any other team except the big ones, it would have been played without any limelight. When it comes to the idea of legalizing something which was considered dangerous for the sport, when the idea of ball tampering is thought to be legalized, is being thought upon, then why don't we go a step ahead, legalize match fixing, legalize doping? Let's go ahead one step and legalize betting, legalize doping, allow players to consume substances which are thought to be banned, to use steroids. For me, let sports athlete use steroids. Continuing with this article, it was all about damage control, and to show that they can make quick decisions, the Cricket Australia board decided to suspend the players. It was all about damage control, and to show that they could make quick decisions, the Cricket Australia board decided to suspend the players and call them home, where they were given the harshest sanctions, that is, stripping them of their captaincy, banning them for 1 year. At this point, emotions and sentiments took over rather than sound logic. Logic would have dictated not banning the players, rather keeping them in the team and on probation, but that will always be a pipe dream because this ball tampering legalizing will be a short term measure. One of the reasons such emotions come pouring out and such decisions are taken because of the embarrassment faced by the cricketing body, by the leading sport body in that particular country, and also the inclusion of nationalism and patriotism. Nationalism and patriotism have become an integral part of sports. The only way to arrest such incidents would be to keep nationalism and patriotism away from sports. One plays sports but for themselves and not for an institution, which in this case is the country. The country is simply a brand. The country is simply a brand where they are given resources one would not be able to afford alone. Bowlers using saliva to shine the ball is common sight in this sport, but in a post-mythological virus world, they might have to reconsider the practice, making their lives tougher in what many believe has already become a batter's game. I disagree with this. It was a batter's game partially 30 years ago. Even before that, today also, blaming it to be a batter's game just because the bowlers won't be able to use saliva to swing the ball is a poor excuse. A few former players feel that the game's custodian might have to suspend the use of saliva. Then they might have to suspend players hugging after the match, players hugging during the match when an incident happens, when they take wickets, when they take a catch. Moot point is we don't want players to use sweat and saliva. From where does sweat and saliva emerge? Hot and humid conditions. So why don't we alter the conditions totally? Why don't we play under the roof? Install a retractable roof which will close the stadium from above, means the sunshine will not affect them, it won't be hot and humid, and then switch on the air conditioners inside the stadium. There will be no question of sweat and saliva. Let's look at it from the point of view of spectators and the audience. Spectators and the audience, irrespective of which sport is being played, they want to enjoy the match because they have paid a huge amount for it. They don't care about humdrums like ball tampering, match fixing, mankading, sweat, saliva, swinging the ball. Such specifics and the ethical part of the sport are droned on by only the players and the officials. As a spectator, I wouldn't care if the ball swung. I wouldn't care if the bowlers went for 100 runs in their 5 overs. As long as I could watch the match, enjoy it. For me, things like sweat, saliva, swinging the ball, ball tampering, match fixing, mankading, and all these humdrums wouldn't affect me in the longer run. Ironical thing is going to be not whether a particular sport needs to change or alter its condition in terms of using the sweat on the ball, or how football players would behave, would they take off their shirt after celebrations, but this flam of this mythological COVID-19 would be caught in the lardy dardy of the bureaucratic red tape. Never will a government have a control on a country's sport more than what will be seen after the influence of this particular mythological virus dies down. Won't be a surprise if the sporting bodies, the sports itself is caught in a bureaucratic red tape, or as that article said, in the obstinate world of games custodians.
This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, the weekly show with Aditya.
This ends Article 201 on the 29th of April 2020. Stay tuned for the next episode.
This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, the weekly show with Aditya.